Math 2, Unit 7, Section 2. Today we're going to be talking about special right triangles, and specifically we are going to be talking about 30, 60, no, just kidding, 45, 45, 90 triangles. Now, tomorrow we're going to do another lesson where we talk about 30, 60, 90. We're just going to split it up so that it makes it a little bit easier, and hopefully you'll end up remembering it. You can always come back to this, but what happens is that in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, do you notice how two of them are 45s? Since your angles match, that means that two of your sides will also match. So across from each of the 45-degree angles, both of those are labeled as X. Okay, they are both the same. The hypotenuse ends up being whatever the legs are, that same number, but root 2. Now, you could find that answer by using your Pythagorean theorem. Like, you can always go back to the Pythagorean theorem. But one thing with 45, 45, 90 triangles is that sometimes they only give you one side value. So, for instance, if I told you that this side right here was 5, could you tell me what the rest of the sides were? Yeah. So if this is 5, then this side would be 5, and this side would be 5 root 2. Pretty tough, huh? Okay. So that is kind of the main idea. And then we're going to start kind of working through some problems. And obviously some of them might be slightly more complicated. Okay. So still on page 426, it kind of has the essential understanding. One thing that it's good to know is that your hypotenuse equals root 2 times your leg. Now, I want us to maybe go ahead and make our index card now. What I would like you to do, and this is just going to kind of be like a quick reference for you, I want you to fold your index card in half. I like to fold it hamburger. But you could do it either way. It really doesn't matter. However you want to do it will work with me. You don't always have to make things the same way I do. Okay. Then what I want you to do is on the outside here, I am going to write 45, 45, 90. Okay? So on the outside, if you did it long ways like hot dog, that's fine. Just on the outside, you're going to write 45, 45 so that when you open it. Okay, so do you see how this could open like this up? And so I'm going to write 45, 45, 90, and then I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to end up writing instructions.
Are we writing 45?
So I've already made one, and then I'm going to end up writing instructions in here. Do we need help? Do we need to look at our neighbors and make sure they're doing this correctly? Okay. Well, look at your neighbor. Make sure that they did it right. Okay. Now, when I open this up, I'm going to write on this side right here. What I'd like you to do is draw a triangle, a 90 triangle, a right triangle. So we have a 90-degree triangle. I'm going to write here 45 and 45. Across from each of the 45s, we know those are X. And then across from my hypotenuse is X root 2. I would also like you to write down here that H stands for hypotenuse equals a leg times root 2. Because we'll end up using this equation to help us solve things sometimes. Okay? So H stands for hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is a leg times root 2. Does that make sense? Like the leg here, leg times root 2. Tomorrow when we do our 30, 60, 90 triangle, we'll end up flipping this over and writing 30, 60, 90. And then we'll flip that open and have instructions for that. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Okay, so does everybody have all that written down? Okay, so we are going to end up moving on. Once you have that, we'll use this throughout our lesson today to help us out. So please now turn to page 427. And we are going to do the got it problem number 1. Okay, so it says, what is the length of the hypotenuse of a 45, 45, 90 triangle with a leg length of 5 root 3? I would prefer you to always draw a picture to help you see what's going on. So they told us that a leg is 5 root 3. Okay, so I have a 90 and this is a 45, 45. They said a leg is 5 root 3, which means that both legs are 5 root 3. Correct? Because they're both 45-degree angles. We are trying to find the hypotenuse. Do you remember how we have an equation for the hypotenuse? What is my equation for the hypotenuse? Okay, I want us to write the equation. H equals leg times root 2. So now I'm going to go H equals, what is my leg?
5 root 3.
So we're going to go 5 root 3 times root 2. Now, does this make a pair? No. So if it doesn't make a pair, what do? Just multiply them together. So that means my hypotenuse is going to equal 5 what? 5 root 6. And we're done. Okay, questions? Okay, so let's go to the next one. It says, find the value of each variable. If your answer is not an integer, express it in simplest radical form. Okay, so this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So if this side is 60, how much is this one down here?
60.
Okay, what is the equation I know for a 45, 45, 90 triangle? I want you to write this every time. Do you know why I want you to write it every time? So that you will end up remembering it. Okay? The more you write it, the more you work with it, it'll just be like, oh yeah, hypotenuse equals leg times root 2. Okay, so if I'm finding this y value, that's my hypotenuse. So y equals, what's my leg? 60 times root 2. Can I simplify that at all? Nope, it's just going to end up being 60 root 2, right? So 60 times root 2 is just 60 root 2, and that is my answer. Any questions? Okay, we are moving on to problem number 2. You need to find the value for y. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to find that answer. Don't forget to write the equation. All right, do I have a volunteer to come up and do number 2 for Candy? Okay, Kate, come on up. You can use any pen you want. Okay. Perfect. All right. So I like how she wrote down her equation first. Hypotenuse equals leg times root 2. Since our leg is root 5 and our hypotenuse is y, she just substituted those in. So we have root 5 times root 2. There's no pairs there, so we multiply them together, and y equals root 10. Questions? All right. Problem number 2. Got it. Finding the length of a leg. Is this not on page 427? No. What page is it on? 428. You guys are amazing how you can change pages just like that. Bless you. Okay. When I don't have a picture, My suggestion is to, very good, we're going to draw a picture. And we are getting so good at drawing triangles. They look almost as good as my houses, I know. Okay, so again, we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Okay, and it says the length of the hypotenuse of this triangle is 16. So where does the 16 go? On the hypotenuse. So this is 16. It says, what is the length of one of the legs? So we don't know what these legs are. What is my equation?
H equals leg times.
Okay, so what am I going to plug in? 16 equals, and I'm just going to put x. Is that okay? X times root 2. Now, I want to find the leg. I want to get the x by itself. So what would I do to get the x by itself? Good. Divide by root 2 to both sides. Now, this reminds me of what we did earlier today, in that we can't have a root in our denominator. So it's called rationalizing the denominator. Okay, so I'm just going to write here. Rationalize the denominator. Okay. Do you remember what to do? Good. We'd have to multiply by root 2 to both the top and the bottom. When I multiply by root 2, what happens to the denominator? It just becomes a 2. Root 4 makes a 2, right? So 2. And then I have 16 root 2 on the top. And can that reduce? To what? 8. So we have 8 root 2 is my leg. And remember how hypotenuse equals leg times root 2? If I were to plug this back in here, and I had 8 root 2 times root 2, does that make 16? 8 root 2 times root 2. You see how I'd get a pair of 2's? And so I'd end up with 8 times 2, and it equals 16. So you can kind of check your answer by plugging it back in. Okay? Any questions on that problem? We're good? How do you guys feel about this? Thumbs up, down? How's the lesson going? Just okay? Does anybody have any questions they want to ask me? Okay, we're going to move on. Okay, so we are still on page 428, problem number 3. I would like you to find those legs that are missing right there. So what will we start by doing? What is our formula? Oh my goodness. Okay. When you get the answer, raise your hand. You guys are fast. This one was actually kind of easy though. Perfect. Good. Perfect. Yep, that's it. That's exactly it. Beautiful. Good. See? Perfect. Were you just kidding about opening in the middle? Right. No? Do you wish I would confuse me? Yeah. Okay, the correct answer is 15. So let's check this out. So hypotenuse is 15 root 2. I'm just going to put equals x times root 2. It doesn't matter if I use x or y because those are both going to end up being the same. How do I get rid of the root 2 by the x? Very good. You have to divide by root 2. Well, when you do that, what do you notice? These also cancel out. So that means that x equals 15. Now, if x is 15, what is y? 15. Okay? They asked you to solve for the variables, so make sure you write both answers there. Yes, Denise?
If it was on a test, homework, do it official work, or can you just plug it in? 'Cause,
So you just know that you would take away the root 2 and that's 15. On a problem like that, I think I'd be okay with that. Okay? All right, number 4. Okay, let's see what you can do with number 4. This one's more complicated. And I'll check answers, and I'd like a volunteer to come and do this problem. No, I'll check your answer. Perfect. Okay, good. Yeah? Okay. Perfect, good, good. Perfect. So when you're at this point, and you don't. Perfect, good. Yes. Get it? So now you know where it is. 10 and 2. That's it? All right, Albert, going on. Okay, Albert's going to do this for us, so we can pay attention. The correct answer was 5 root 2, if I didn't make it around to check yours. And I'll talk through what Albert's writing. Okay, good. So he did not start with his equation, but he is kind of, we're going to let him go. So hypotenuse equals leg times root 2. So that's how we got 10 equals x times root 2. Getting x by itself, we divide by root 2, which is great. And then we notice, oh, we can have a root in the denominator, so he's going to rationalize the denominator by multiplying by root 2 to both the top and the bottom. And so you end up with 10 root 2 over 2, and that can reduce to make 5 root 2. Perfect. Don't forget your candy. All right, any questions? We're good? Do I need to go back through any of that? Okay. We just have a couple more problems here. We're going to look at these word problems. So there are 45, 45, 90 triangles in the real world. Okay. So problem number 1, got it. You plan to build a path along one diagonal of a 100-foot by 100-foot square garden. What should I do? Draw a picture. Here is my square garden. Even though it doesn't look like a square, it is. How should I label each of those sides? 100. Okay. You're going to do a path along one diagonal. There's my path. To the nearest foot, how long will the path be? Now, when you have a diagonal that's going through this square, it is making your 45, 45, 90 triangles. What am I missing? Am I missing a leg or the hypotenuse? What's my formula for a hypotenuse? Perfect. So that means h will equal, what is my leg? 100 times root 2, or we can just go ahead and write 100 root 2. And that is 100 root 2 what? Feet. Now, they said to the nearest foot. Do you guys know? How could I figure out what the nearest foot is? I would plug it into my calculator. Pretty crazy. So we remember we're going to write 100 in here, and then I'm going to put my root 2. We good there?
Yeah.
I press enter. So what is the nearest foot? How many feet is that approximately?
41.4.
That the nearest foot would be to the nearest whole number.
141 feet.
141 feet. And you guys know the little squiggly equal sign means approximately equal to. And so I'm going to put 141 feet. Okay, questions? All right, last problem. Dinner design. What is the side length of the smallest square plate? What size plate is it? What type of plate is it? Square plate. So guess what I'm going to draw? A square. Pretty crazy how that works out. On which a 20 centimeter chopstick can fit along a diagonal without any overhang. So here is my chopstick. And how long was that chopstick? 20 centimeters. So I'm just going to write 20 for right now, and I'll add centimeters later. Okay. And so on this one it says, round your answer to the nearest tenth of a centimeter. So it wants to know the side lengths, which are the same. What formula will I use?
H equals leg times x.
Good. So what will I write now? Bless you. Good. And how do I get rid of the root 2? Divide by root 2. Is it okay to leave my answer like that, 20 over root 2? Absolutely not. So, how do I get rid of it? Very good. Multiply by root 2 to the top and the bottom. That makes a pair of 2's. And so my denominator is 2. And on the top I have 20 root 2. Can that reduce? Good. So that is 10 root 2 centimeters, which is approximately how many centimeters to the nearest tenth? So we have 10 root 2. I'm going to press equals. To the nearest tenth. What would be the nearest tenth? 14.1 centimeters.
Will you multiply 10 by root 2?
Yep. All right, any other questions?